Okay. Islam, Africa, and Europe. Ironically, south of the. Oh, sorry. Okay, friends, I literally just recorded this, but then I kept getting distracted.
Ecclesiastical.
And anyways, it doesn't matter. But let's look. Pyrenees, Pyrenees, Pyrenees. That's the word. South of the Pyrenees, encircling the Mediterranean. I was looking it up because I already forgot it. Extending beyond the Indus, the scholars among the figurative descendants of the prophet Abraham's first son, Ishmael, were becoming the direct heirs of ancient learning and thought. Learner, it's like Lerner, and Mahdi, Mahdi, argued that this was made possible by the fact that in Islam, the absorption of new and alien sciences was a jurisdictional. Oh my God, I forgot to tell y'all. I took a couple chews, so I'm a little zooted. So if I have any cotton mouth or whatever, I apologize. Um, but we're vibing, we're chilling. It's cool. I'm okay. Oh my God, I keep looking at myself rather than the camera. We're recording on my iPad. This is not, but I don't have like a like professional setup. But we're just in my room on my bed reading because this is how I do my homework in my bed. I should not be doing my homework in my bed. I do my homework better on my at my desk or downstairs. But I don't have a desk no more because my room is smaller and like different layout. But I have more books and it's okay. But this is how I do my homework in my bed. It's really bad though. Don't do it. Argued that it was made possible by the fact that in Islam the absorption of new and alien sciences was a jurisdictional rather than a theological question, and was thus resolved by the dispute of advocates before a jurist. The issue was whether or not these sciences interfered with beliefs prescribed by law. My sister texted me back. Oh, okay. Prescribed by law. What? Sorry, I've got so I apologize. As defined by jurists, there was too, they note, an absence of ecclesiastical, which means relating to Christian, church, or clergy. I looked it up. Authority in Islam. The authority, an authority that might as well have paralleled the medieval Christian church in its preoccupation with competing heresies. Robinson believes that perhaps even more significant was the ethos of Arab culture, and here's the quote: Arab customs accepted and encouraged the adoption by every clan of peoples of all kinds and every nationality, who then became wholly Arab. Persians, Syrians, Egyptians, Berbers, Goth, Greeks, and a host of others joined the Arabs, considered themselves as Arab, and really became Arabs. But still greater numbers became Muslims. I think about that. Okay, sorry for the cotton mouth. I can hear it and I can feel it. 87. Um, I think about that like the melting pot, but I don't know if they're like, hold up, sorry. In America, the melting pot, like they're like, oh yeah, come on in, rather than the Christian, where they were like, oh my God, I was just talking about this. So there's this article called "The Christianization of Egypt," and it discusses the ways in which African traditions was put under, like, was still practiced but just called Christian, like Christianity, Christian with Christian labels, because they couldn't practice their own. So I think about that, like, in that sense, like if it's not Christian, you can't practice. That's like the Christian church compared to Arab church was like, come on, y'all, we all family type of thing. Sorry for that noise. I should put that finger off. Like that's kind of what I'm getting. While the spiritual and most often the temporal authorities of Christendom shunned much of the learning amassed by pre-Christian civilizations, the Arabic-speaking scholars took this knowledge as a legitimate booty of the wars won by Muslim armies. Arabic culture now began the absorption of the more developed scientific and philosophic thought of the defeated, just as earlier the Persians and Syriatic cultures had absorbed the elements of Greek culture once it finally proscribed officially in the Christian Rome of the 6th century, and the Greeks before them took to the intellectual produce of Egyptian and Babylonian cultures. Cool. Protected and facilitated by the expansion of Islamic states, Arabic scholars between the 7th and 10th centuries achieved access to the works of their Mediterranean predecessors. The most intensive period of translation among the into the Arabic from Greek, Sanskrit, Persian, and Syriac took place between 750 and 900 AD. Translations, however, appear to have been selective, since historical works were generally neglected during the earliest period of absorption. Translators, tending towards a predominance of physicians, demonstrated interests that generally attended to works in the fields of medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. Cool. So that just you know how like when we learned about like was Rome before or after Greece? I think it was Greece and then Rome. Let's look it up. But one absorbed the other. Did Rome defeat Greece? Yeah, so it's Greece and then Rome. Okay, So like that, and they take on their information. That's what they're talking about in terms of how Arabic culture did it. Okay, cool. And then next, the knowledge they was translating it. In the Islamic East, the artistic and intellectual center would gravitate from Damascus and Baghdad to Cairo, as the toll from incursions by Seljuk, Seljuk, Turks, Christian crusaders, Berbers, Arab nomads, and Mongol armies mounted. In the West, the Maghrib, Maghrib, the most glorious centers of Islamic culture were to be found in the Iberian Peninsula. It was in Spain, and particularly Toledo, in parentheses, acquired by Christendom in 10,085 after more than 300 years of Muslim rule, and then end the parentheses, that the work of translation was concentrated. In the 12th century, following closely the 11th century in the 12th century, following closely the 11th century translations from Arabic to Italian of Constantine the African, and then it says D, 10,087, so I'm guessing his death was in 10,087. So, of Constantine the African, of writing Lo siento. Yo, oh my god. Oh. Guys, I built my bed, and I think one of the screws came out, and I really am not Bob the Builder. I typically ask my sister to help to do this, because I can build, I can do it, but because I can feel a little, in the 12th water. Anyways, how's y'all's day so far? It's a really good book so far. I'm so excited to see like the rest of the book, because this part is like the setup of everything. Like, okay, here's the past, here's what led to this, like the evolution. First, we got to get to the root of the problem. Anyways. In the 12th century, following closely the 11th century translations from Arabic to Latin of Constantine the African, death 10,087. Well, 1,087. You know how you say 2,000? Oh, yeah, so 1,087. Girl. Of medical writings, European scholars came face to face with the knowledge of ancient world's philosophy, physics, mathematics, medicine, alchemy, and astronomy of the first time in almost 1,000 years. And then there's a quotation. At the beginning of the 12th century, Greek knowledge was available in Greek and in Arabic, but more accessible in the latter form, so Arabic. Moreover, many Greeks' works were lost in the original but available in Arabic translations. That was like, bet. When the West became sufficiently mature to feel the need for deeper knowledge, when it wanted to renew its contacts with ancient thought, it turned to Arabic sources. Thus, the main intellectual task of the 12th and 13th centuries was one of translation. Much of the intellectual energy of medieval times was spent not in the creation of new intellectual values, but in the transmission of older ones. Knowledge was won not by fresh and independent investigation, but by translation, chiefly from the Arabic, which is really interesting. You know how like right now, like we have all this like New Age this, New Age that, but like why don't we go back to the ancients because they was on to something and or indigenous. You know, like that's how I think about stuff. Because if they was on to something for so long, what am I looking at? Canvas. Because I want to see if I can have access to something and download more stuff. That just reminded me I have so much to do. And I need to make a list. But I've been so like preoccupied with fixing my skin. What's the number? Sorry, friends. Let me go back and try this again. Hold up. Sorry. But I want to share. I just thought of things to put onto Discord in terms of information. But because I haven't put it down on a paper, I keep forgetting, and then I'm like, oh my god, I was supposed to do that. So I'm trying to figure out. There we go. There we go. It does match. This can be a later thing. It can be. Okay, we'll do it later. But I'll just put that up for now. Anyways, thank you for being patient with me. By the end of the 12th century, the universities of Salerno and I'm very not professional. As I continue, we'll get more professional. Oh yeah, my skin, that's been preoccupying me. I don't know if you've seen it, but imagine this like everywhere. I was using the wrong soap. It was just drying my stuff out so bad. I didn't really notice because I was so life. But it's all right. Going back to ancient. Oh, that's why I opened Canvas. So there was this class, and there's all this ancient knowledge that has so much value because, you know what I mean? Like there's this thing that's like no idea is your own. Like all these ideas have been already had, and so like it's all there. Sometimes you just gotta go back to the past to understand your present, or whatever Kamala said. You exist in all the context, whatever came before. Right. By the end of the 12th century, the universities of Salerno and Bologna in Italy, Paris and Montpellier, Montpellier in France, and Oxford, and then in the 13th century, Cambridge in England had been founded on this quite extraordinary event. Islamic civilization, however, did more than simply function as a belated conduit in the development of Western civilization. Northern Africa as the end point to the gold trade with West Africa was systematically proscribed to European merchants. Let's highlight it. The purpose, apparently, was to maintain the secret of the sources of the mines and the trans-Saharan routes of trade. In the 10th century, however, the Arab traders began remix began the extraction of a more variable wealth, slaves. And that, when like people talk about that, okay, it's so interesting. Utilizing ports on the Red Sea coast over the next 900 years, Arab slave traders plundered African societies for sorry, utilizing ports on the Red Sea coast. Sorry, that was so loud. Over the next 900 years, Arab slave traders plundered African societies for perhaps as many as 17 million people. That, however, is another story, perhaps another history. More to the point is the drawing of the following historical schemata that introduces some of the more consequential effects of Islamic civilization on European peoples, their histories, and their institutions. What is compelling, of course, is that the impact of Islam on Europeans goes far beyond the accepted lore of Muslim civilization as a treasury for ancient knowledge. This was but an important petard. A much greater force confronted European destiny. It was not as the descendants of legendary Hebrews or as the vessels of ancient knowledge that Muslims came to be most frequently represented among European peoples. Islam, a faith that embraced a multiracial civilization, let me highlight. A faith that embraced a multiracial civilization incorporating peoples from Arabia, Africa, the Near East, the East, and Southern Europe would be known by its armies. And Africans were prominent in its armies from the very beginning. Africans had fought in the pre-Islamic Arabian Wars, and within the first century of the Islamic era, the Christian 7th century in parentheses, their presence had already been noted in the empires of Europe. For 400 years later, when Christendom launched a furious counter-assault against the enemies whose very being mocked the beliefs of Europe and materially diminished its daily life, Islam and the Black Moors was a familiar identity. Interesting. There's so much history I don't know. Guys, did you know I used to hate history? It's because of how it was taught to me in high school and like school, compared to like at home where you would get stories and stuff, which were so fun and like real lived experiences. But anyways, the Christian encounter with Islam would have been both racial and would have both then the Christian encounter with Islam would have then both racial and economic resonances. Sorry, sometimes it takes me a minute, and that's okay. Oh yeah, but this allergic reaction is all over my face. You can see here, my lips are chapped. It was bad, but for a while I didn't care. I was like, girl, let me just get through school. I was so depressed. I'm not gonna lie. Burnout, depression, this, that, and the third. It was like the universe was like, sit down. And I was just like, la. And then the universe was like, okay, well, girl, I told you to sit down. And so I was sad. On account of their logistical appetites, the Christian Crusades, beginning in the 11th century, against the Saracens in Jerusalem, brought to fruition the mercantile. That's the part that we need, because that goes into another chapter 5. Brought to fruition the mercantile Italian capital city. Brought to fruition the mercantile Italian city-states of the Middle Ages. These entrepots dominated southern and western European commerce with the non-European world until the middle of the 14th century. Highlight. I love pink. By the beginnings of that century, though papal and regal levies for crusades increased in number and frequency, actual crusades had almost entirely ended. Once the religious enthusiasm and fanaticism that clothed the carnage of the Crusades had abated, and the ambitions of Norman and Frankish feudal lords and their clerical allies had been satiated, 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 or overwhelmed by the weight of bureaucratic administrations and the seductions of corruption, the sea trade of Italian coastal states turned from the merchandising of war, the convenience of armies, and the finance of invasion to the conventions of commercial trade and the course of piracy. Europe, whose population had been stimulated by a higher food productivity associated with new tillage technologies and clearing of cultivatable sorry. But when listening to this, already hearing this, I'm like thinking about the ways in which that translates to America. Like the tillage of new tillage technology and how that led to the Dust Bowl in the Midwest, and that you know what I mean. The clearing of cultivatable lands for fuel. Think about Palestine. Think about fucking America. You know what I like all these things. It's like capitalism. It's like these. A lot of this part is showing how, for myself at least, how it's like not situating. It's demonstrating how capitalism, because capitalism and the Western civilization were like this, how it evolved over time to have its tentacles everywhere, and how it's like the same thing over time, like an evolutionary process. And then, oh my gosh, so I took a picture of this in Richmond, and we went on this tour, and it was showing like the boat, the train stuff, the trains, and like so this new modern train was on these very old train tracks from when, like, back in the day, where they would enslave people and bring them there and stuff. And it was like showing how capitalism is like an evolutionary process rather than some stagnant thing. You know how like the industrial revolution was seen as like one place in time, like, oh, this is when, from this time to this time is the industrial revolution, rather than seeing it as like a progression of technology over time. Like our phones started off as like what, a tin can, and then now we have like these smartphones, but like they had, you know what I mean, like that type of thing. Anyways, um Europe, whose population had been stimulated by a higher food productivity associated with new tillage technology and clearing of cultivatable lands for fuel, and as a concomitant to the preparation and transportation of its armies of invasion, and perhaps by benign climate changes, had expanded. See, right now, literally right now. Sorry. I don't know why I said it like that, but you know what I mean? Like, literally right now. How the West is literally living in its history, because European civilization turned into like Western civilization, and now we as Americans in a Western nation are living in our own history. Europe extended itself both horizontally into the establishment of new towns and the resettlement of old ones, and geopolitically, eastward into the lands of Prussians, Slavs, and Christian Byzantium, westward into England, and south into the claves of the Iberian and Italian peninsulas. The Christian and Jewish merchant lords and bankers of Venice, Florence, and Genoa, Genoa, already implicated by the opportunities, associations, and investments of the previous period, successfully resisted their abhorrence of the Muslim infidel and his nefarious trades. Following the much more frequent sorry, you can already hear it. I'm going to take a break and then drink some water and chill, you know. Following the much more frequent practice among clerks in purchasing dispensations to legitimate their bastard offspring. Oh. Merchants bought dispensations for their commercial trafficking with the infidels. Let's look up what dispensation means. Dispensation. Oops. I lost it. Found it.
Dispensation.
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 Dispensation. Exemption from a rule or usual requirement. Immunity. Okay. Following the much more frequent practice among clerks of purchasing dispensations to legitimate. Oh, they're getting like a pass to legitimate their bastard offspring. Merchants bought dispensations for their commercial trafficking with the infidels. Oh, they're getting passes to be able to trade, to have like commercial trafficking with Muslims who were considered infidels. Oh, see, that's what happens when you look stuff up and you're like, oh, okay. I'll write that down so I can make a note of that on my here. Okay, and then in parentheses, Pope John 22. Pope John the 22nd. It's XXII. Yeah. From 1316 to 1334, may have also used one if he had not had the fortune of being infallible, for he bought 40 pieces of gold cloth from Damascus, while the gold of Africa and the silks, spices, and sugar of the East and Asian Minor were measured by the Italians and their Islamic correspondents against European slaves, which were Slavs, Turkish, Bulgar, and Circassians and goods. Okay, so it's talking about how these, like, not really competing, but these differing commercial, like, capitalistic ventures are kind of like a little bit kissing and canoodling rather than opposing. You know what I mean? Like teamwork to exploit. So this is where we're going to stop for the next part. Europe and the Eastern trade. Okay, exciting. And then put a little tab here. We'll be back. Oh, 27 minutes. Sorry for my rambling.